even if you don't feel comfortable with yourself in a sexy way, it doesn't have to be particularly sexy. It doesn't matter if you have your hair done or however you look. Just being with yourself raw in your natural state, even, it doesn't matter.
Hey guys, welcome to our SoulFam Podcast, where I interview space holders from all over the world. I'm your host. My name is Karolina, and I am the manifestation mentor. Today on the show, we have Katie Ellis, the Feminine Inbodyment guide. Welcome to the show, Katie. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
I am very, very happy that you agreed to be on our podcast. And I would love to start with this question of embodiment, because it's a very unique phrase that you're using. You're an embodiment guide. So I'm curious to know, what does it mean?
Mm. I love that you're acknowledging the power of embodiment because for me, it really means coming into the body and into the purpose of all that you are, embracing all parts of yourself and allowing your soul to descend into the body and radiate from that space. And it's really all about opening and connecting into your energy and bringing the ethereal soul version of you into physical being.
That's amazing. And so, do you have any specific practices or modalities or something that you do on a daily basis to maintain and nurture and expand this connection with your essence, with your, true higher self?
Yes. You know, in the daily life, we always go through different emotions, different feelings. And for me, I find it that I must stick to somatic practices, whether it be dance, whether it be yoga, moving my body, even without a structure, just moving my body, shaking my body. It really helps me tune back into myself, back into the source of who I truly am, my soul, so that I can then radiate it out because those layerings of feelings and emotions can just come over us so often. But the more that we get back into the body and take daily practices such as breath work or anything just to get you in your body, like I said, just moving, it helps so much.
And what if someone actually struggles with the mind coming, creeping in and saying like, oh, maybe you don't move in a good enough way, or, oh my God, what shopping should I do for dinner? Or like, how do you deal with that if someone really struggles to get in the body and in the present moment and connected to our subconscious mind as well and our instinct? Because I believe that our body is also linked to our subconscious mind and what is stored in there as like emotions that we've been feeling and sometimes suppressing throughout our lives. So what to do if someone has a challenge with that?
Yes, like you said, energy trauma is stored in the body, and so it's definitely normal that many people try to avoid it, and so they don't show up to practices. They say, "Oh, I can't connect, I can't be present with myself," and they get into the mental plane, and they start trying to find logical reasons to fix their problems and find solutions. So, in those scenarios where people are having hard times connecting within, I definitely for there's many different things, but I 2 things are coming up for me. One thing is just, like, tuning into whatever you're feeling and raging out, just letting it out, screaming, letting it out in a safe space where you can do so, where you have privacy, just letting the emotion out however it needs to be without thinking about, "Oh, it should look like this," or "It should sound like this." Just allowing your voice to be let out, allowing your body to just shake, not any formal structure to follow, just moving. And breath work, most definitely. I'm a breathwork facilitator, and there's been so many times I've had so many practices, but I still will avoid going into the practice sometimes because it is deep work and you are connecting into the body. However, once you do start breathing and connecting into yourself, you do tap into that subconscious rim. So the mental mind chatter goes away and you're able to just flow into your body and um, allow that energy to dissipate. So you're not thinking about how to move the energy or how it needs to be. You're just in it and you're being. So those are 2 practices, just letting yourself move like crazy, voice it out, and breath work.
Beautiful. And I love what you said. And I would add to that also to get to the right side of your brain, because if you're thinking and you're in your mental body, then it's usually your logic that is coming up with all these thoughts and all these reasons why you shouldn't do what you're doing. But if you can, for example, imagine the energy in your body, or visualize yourself dancing and then going with the vision of how you see it, or anything that activates the right side of your brain, you're also going to get more in touch with this feminine part of you, feminine side of your brain as well. And that should help. And I also feel like it's important to mention that if you have the thought of like, I don't want to do this, and this is bullshit or whatever, this is also, as you said, like a feeling. There is an emotion behind it. There is some resistance. So going into this is actually a process of going through this in a way. So when you can allow these thoughts to be there, when you can allow this resistance to be there, it's going to dissipate at some point, because you're going to let it move through you and out of you, rather than resisting the resistance, which actually makes it worse, because it's kind of like adding the fuel to the fire, right? When you cannot do something, you're like, oh, I can't move, I can't do this, I can't express myself, but then you resist yourself for not being able to do it. It's worse, right? But if you accept, okay, right now I feel like I can't do it, I'm going to sit with this feeling of resistance that I can't do it, I don't want to do it, and so on, and let it flow through me and out of me. And as you said, through movement, through breathing, through anything else that your body needs to let it out, then it's going to dissipate at some point, and it's not going to be an issue anymore, right?
The only way out is through. And even if you're just sitting with yourself presently, noticing the resistance, that's the beginning starting point. And oftentimes part of our human experience, we quite enjoy the polarity. As much as we say that we hate it and we believe that we hate it, we love the polarity. And when we're at resistance, that's where we're meeting those shadow parts of ourself, those pieces of ourself that we turn away from and we just don't pay attention to. But when you hold space for yourself and allow all those pieces to come through, that is when the energy begins to radiate out. And in those pieces of yourself, you really find the golden nuggets, we can say, the beautiful rays of light that are you, that shine through. And they all interplay with each other. We need all of these different emotions and sides of ourselves to be fully in who we truly are.
That's beautifully said. Thank you so much. And I'm curious to know a little bit of your backstory as well. What has guided you to be on this path of becoming the feminine embodiment guide?
Yes. Wow, long journey. But I would say it started out, I mean, since childhood, a lot of our journeys begin in those phases when we're just a sponge and absorbing everything, and it flows from there. I felt a lot of pieces of me already knowing my purpose and what I was going to do in the world, even at a young age. But I really came into it when I was in my modeling career about 6 years ago. And I was really facing a lot of resistance within myself, a lot of emotions, a lot of anxiety that I just didn't know how to handle. And when I hit that point with myself in the modeling industry, I was very hard on myself, constantly comparing myself. And I was a perfectionist with my looks. So no matter what I did, I was never good enough. And it was really that shadow piece of me coming through saying like, hey, we don't feel good enough. Please pay attention to me. And it manifested through my looks. And I went through different phases with it. I stopped caring for myself. I stopped going to events. And then there would be, on the polarizing side, I would try to look perfect, do my makeup perfectly, push myself to go to events. And so I was constantly moving from both sides of the spectrum. And I was never just fully meeting myself in the middle and holding space for everything to really move through all of it. It was just me avoiding constantly. And that's when I was like, wow, I'm a perfectionist with my looks. I have extreme anxiety. I don't know how to handle all these emotions. What do I do? And so I turned back to soul. And I had a big spiritual awakening, and I started going deeper because I knew there was more to me. I was like, I love my physical self. I love expressing myself through photo shoots and modeling and moving my body and creating all these visions that I see in my head. But there's more to this than just the physical rim, and I want to go deeper. So that's when I tapped into the deeper parts of myself, and slowly but surely it evolved into connecting more with the body so that I can bring my soul out into physical fruition.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing this. This is amazing. And it's pretty interesting to realize that even people that are, let's say, in the standard of collective consciousness, in the standard of beauty, right? Because you will be a model and of course you're beautiful. And even you can have some thoughts of like, I'm not enough, I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not skinny enough, or whatever thoughts were coming up for you. And I also know because one of my friends has been, she won Miss Poland in like, I don't remember when, 2014 or whenever. I remember in high school. And it was so interesting to see how she was talking about like, you know, all these people in this industry of like modeling and Miss Poland and all these things. Like most of these girls were feeling not enough. And it's like, okay, so who the hell feels enough in this world if all these most beautiful people, most, you know, slim and fit and, you know, the, let's say, standard of beauty, if all these people within the standard feel not enough, then it's not really about how you look. It's about the state of mind that you're in. And you can feel beautiful even if you quote unquote look ugly, and the other way around. You can look beautiful and then you can feel ugly or not enough or not skinny enough or whatever, which is pretty interesting. But have you ever had someone like telling you something like, okay, but it's easier for you because like you're beautiful, so it's easier for you to feel beautiful, but I am, I don't know, I my weight is like 100 kilos and I stopped caring about my looks long time ago, and it's not as easy for me to now feel the beauty. So the question is, I guess, how to create an identity of beauty as a state of mind, because I feel like it's a state of mind. It's not actually really about the external, it's about the internal world.
Mm. Yes, most definitely. So I created a wounding for this feeling of not good enough, and it's beauty perfectionism is what I call it, and it really goes down to the inability to be seen vulnerably or accept yourself at any phase that's short of this idea of beauty that you have. So a lot of us tend to, regardless of how we look, we create this vision, and it's not even really tangible. It's just like this vision of what we believe and think beauty is and should be, and it's so high. The standards and expectations are just through the roof, to where we have this like anxiety and this insatiable drive that we have to reach that. And we really create this idea out of the feeling of not being enough, because it's almost like this self-validation that we're trying to prove whatever's in our mind, that belief that we're not good enough. We're going to do whatever we can in our reality to show and prove that we aren't enough. So we create this idea that's so, it's not even real. So we're never going to be enough. So we're constantly on that loop. So yes, no matter how you look, it's, if you don't have that allowance for yourself to be vulnerable and see who you are in all phases, then you're going to stay caught up in trying to show yourself, I'm not enough, I'm not enough. And for people who are looking and saying, well, she has the she's the epitome of beauty. She has everything. And I can't embrace beauty because I don't have that. It is being stuck on that mental plane. And so what we do is we move from the idea of beauty that we have, and we connect into those spaces where we don't feel good enough. We move into that vulnerability, practicing opening into being uncomfortable with ourselves, whether that be allowing yourself to dance naked in the mirror, or look at yourself and do some shadow work in the mirror without makeup or something. Or even if, I mean, for me, no matter, even if I had makeup on, I would still feel not good enough. So doing practices that connect me into what I'm truly wanting, which is that feeling. And we spoke to this earlier before we started, like beauty is feeling. It's about the feeling. Feeling beautiful is what's going to allow you to radiate beauty. And so connecting into everything that you're feeling and doing that through whatever ways challenge you and make you feel uncomfortable.
Mm. That's amazing. And I feel like I've also gone through a journey of like feeling enough within myself when it comes to my looks. Although, let's say, generally speaking, most people would say like, you're beautiful. But of course, it shook my confidence as well when my best friend became Miss Poland, right? Then I was comparing myself to her and I was not as slim as her. And, you know, she's the queen and I'm like the second one and whatever. But even at that time, some guys would tell me like, come on, actually, like I would rather choose your let's say looks than hers. And I was just like, oh my god, okay, so some people actually prefer how I look to how she looks, and it's not personal really, it's just about preference of everyone, and everyone has different preferences. Some people prefer, you know, skinny girls, let's say, and some people prefer big butts and whatever, right? So it's always about subjective perspective. So it's never, there's never like one, let's say, I like one picture of beauty that works for everyone, because for everyone beauty means something different. And as we said, it's a feeling. But also when you were explaining it, I was just wondering about this feeling of not enough, because I feel like in some cases it could actually also be a sign for us to know that something is misaligned within ourselves. So for example, if I gain 20 or 30 kilos plus, I would feel not enough about myself, but I know that it would be because I don't feel like it would be aligned for me to eat so unhealthy, or not to move my body, or to just not do anything with myself, but just to be lazy and to just, you know, have all these unhealthy habits. So I feel like there are two sides of this coin. Then one side is like, okay, we might have all these programs of not feeling enough because we compare ourselves to others and we might be jealous, or we might have this social media beauty picture in our mind. But also I feel like sometimes it's about motivation, like this feeling of not feeling enough in our own skin can actually give us a kick in our butt to go and do something about ourselves, because maybe it's a sign for us that how we look is not aligned with the health we want to maintain, or with how we want to go about our life, or what habits we want to have. And so I also see it from a different perspective, right? Because sometimes these negative feelings are actually good for us, because if we're going to put up 10 kilos because of some unhealthy habits we started having, like we eat McDonald's daily now, then if we at some point feel not enough because we are too fat, it's probably good for us to have this kick to be like, okay, screw it, I don't want to feel not enough, I want to do something about my body, I'm going to stop eating McDonald's and go for yoga every day, right? So how do you see this, let's say, flip side of this topic?
Absolutely, yes to all of it. It's polarity. There's different sides to it, and there's different ways that all of this can manifest. How we feel about ourselves can show up in many different ways. And it is all about the feeling of beauty, which makes us then be a byproduct of beauty in our own unique ways. And if we aren't aligned, then it's going to show up. Where how we feel, the frequencies that we are adapting to are going to show up, and we're going to then see that reflected back to us. And so tuning into it all goes back to the soul, like tuning back into your soul and seeing, is my soul physically expressing how she wants or needs to? Am I really being a emanation of that which I truly am? And when you tune into your soul, you'll naturally notice what feels aligned for you and what doesn't. Like, even if you don't really want it, like, for example, if I'm speaking in food terms, if I'm like, I see this apple here, and I know that it's much more nutritious for me, but then I also see this McDonald's here, and I'm just so used to eating it, and it's just, ooh, my taste buds are so used to it, so I'm just gonna eat that. But what about challenging yourself and doing what you're truly feeling is aligned for you, which is that juicy apple that you know is gonna make you feel so vibrant, it's gonna give you lots of fiber, you're gonna feel very in flow, whatever it is, right? That's just the food example. But following what your soul is calling you towards, really listening in, and that requires that connection. Um, but yes, most definitely it can show up, and it can kickstart us into creating this identity of beauty and creating this true version of ourself in physical form.
Amazing. Thanks a lot. And so I just remembered that maybe like a week ago, I was talking to my friend, and she was telling me like, I actually perceive myself as ugly. Like I see myself in the mirror and I can't really look at myself. And I realized that a few years ago when I was skinnier and I was, more of a, let's say, party girl, I was going out and I got all these compliments from all these guys. I could not just, push them away. There were so many of them. They were coming to me, telling me I look like a model, and I felt so confident. And I realized that I was attaching my idea of being good enough or my self-esteem to the opinions of others. So how do you find this beauty and this identity? Like, how do you nurture it so that you're actually not affected much by what other people think, but how do you nurture it within yourself so that you are never, let's say, influenced by any external factors, but you're actually so strongly centered in your own beauty within that it doesn't matter if you get hundreds compliments or if you don't get any, but you're actually like sure of it within.
I love all these questions that you're asking because it speaks so much to what I'm passionate about, and it's just it's beautiful. Um, Firstly, it may seem paradoxical, but I would definitely say sink into the shadows of feeling not good enough, the uncomfortability, and get vulnerable with being ugly. Like, what would happen if you didn't get any attention? What would happen if you really felt so ugly? What would happen if people even told you something like that? What would happen to you? It triggers a fear response. And working with that fear, working with all of those feelings, we do the embodiment work, the somatic practices, the breath work. We move into why we are feeling these ways. We express it. And that's where we meet our soul. That's where we connect deeply within. And also, this intertwines with your last question too, doing more of what you want, what you truly want, regardless of what the external world says. We are so focused on the external world and receiving validation from that. And yes, as humans, we do connect in that way from other people, but we first must source within. And so doing things that your soul really feels called to, tuning into what am I passionate about? What feels good to me to engage with? And allowing yourself again to be in all parts of yourself, allowing yourself to shed and be in that shadow phase and feel like, oh, I'm not ugly. And then pick yourself back up and do something that feels good to you. Take care of yourself, give yourself that self-care, that love.
Amazing. And actually, I have one thing to add to it because this friend that I was talking about, I was actually guiding a psilocybin ceremony when we were talking about this topic. And I intuitively felt like, hey, is this opinion actually yours? Like, can you imagine yourself pulling out these opinions, these judgments that you are ugly, that you are not enough? Just pull it out, all the opinions of your mother, of your father, or whoever your caregiver in childhood was, put it in a imagined bucket or a box and just like give it away. And she's been doing this process for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And I was like, okay, do this process until you really feel like something has lifted off you, like some baggage of opinions and judgments are not on you anymore. And it took her literally like a few minutes. And she was like, oh my God, it was not mine. Like these opinions of judging myself as ugly or criticizing myself constantly is not even me. These thoughts are not even mine. So I encourage also to check, like, is it actually an opinion of mine on me right now? Or is it something that I have like adopted in childhood? Because as we said, we are a sponge in childhood. So we take everything on as truth. But it might have been just criticism of your mom, dad, grandma, or whoever was there in your childhood. And then you just took it because as a child, you don't have any filter of what's true or not true. So you just took it and now you're just holding on to it. So I would say like, check if it's actually your opinion or if it's something that you can just be like, okay, I have a boundary here. I'm not taking your shit on, mom, dad. I'm not taking your opinions on anymore. I'm giving it back to you. I'm placing the boundary in here. And you can place the boundary by a energy bubble or just literally like putting like a fence between you and this person. And you can also cleanse the energy cords between you and this person to really make sure that if you have something within your consciousness, that it's yours and you can transform it. But if something is not yours, just give it back and it's not going to be governing you anymore.
Mm. Yes, now that we have the discernment, we can then choose we want to embody and what we do not want to embody, what is ours and what isn't. And yes, being in childhood, like you can be dancing as a child, right? And then your parents say, stop that, it's too much. You're being too much right now. And then as a child, it may seem like a small situation to an adult, but as a child, we close off because we think, oh, well, she said I'm too much and it's not good to be so expressive and big. So I'm not enough in that way. Like I have to shrink a little bit. And so then we adapt to constantly shrink. And then our passion for dance goes away and we can't fully dance and be ourselves because it's way too big. So
Mm,
now that
yeah.
we grow and evolve into knowing ourselves more, we can say, what feels aligned for me and what doesn't? Is that my truth? No, it's not. So I love that you said that.
Mm, amazing. And I also have a question about embodying the goddess. Because, like, first of all, I'm curious about how you embody it in your everyday life, apart from dancing practices that you already mentioned, but also about how you, let's say, harmonize it with the idea of your inner teenager and your inner child, because these parts of us are also, true for us. They are also there. And so let's say, how do you dance between these parts? Because like we can't embody the goddess like all day every day, because sometimes when we're triggered we go into our inner child, or sometimes our inner masculine might want to show up to get some shit done for our business or something like that. So how do you embody the goddess in everyday life, and how do you also navigate exploring other parts of you when they show up together with the goddess?
I love this topic. It's juicy, multidimensional. We could talk about it for days. But the goddess is all that is. So she has a feminine essence and she embodies both life, death. So think of the life, death, rebirth, all the cycles, all the phases. And so, in a way, we kind of can embody her every day, no matter how we look, no matter how we feel. It doesn't have to just be this sensual, sexy goddess all the time. The goddess can also be that dark, shadowy side where if you're feeling really ugly and you want to rage, you want to let anger out, it can be that too. If you're feeling really sad and want to sob and let it all out, it can be that too. It can be the death too. And she holds space for all of it. And so I think our sensuality is a beautiful key to that, and flowing through all of those different archetypes of ourself, that inner teenager that wants to be seen and heard and wants to be understood, that part of ourself that wants to be expressive and sexy, that part of ourself that is not feeling that great and wants to just eat chips and watch TV, whatever it may be. Holding space for all of that and tuning into our senses is really how we can flow with all of them. And that's also how we cultivate a deep connection with our soul, because senses are kind of like a bridge for our soul to our body, to our physical experience. And so when we tune into how we are feeling deeply, just feeling into our body, noticing what's in our awareness, noticing whatever part of yourself is coming up. How am I feeling? What do I want to do? What do I not want to do? Or am I feeling numb? And when you tune in deeply with yourself like that and honor however you're feeling and hold space, you're being with all that is. And that's just the most authentic expression of yourself. And from there, once you let those pieces of yourself live, then you can allow these other parts of yourself to come through. And it just is like this beautiful divine flow. And it's like you're just in this spiral. Life isn't linear, it's a beautiful spiral that you're just flowing in. And when you embrace that energy and move with all the cycles, that's when you are embodying the goddess.
Beautiful. Thanks a lot. And speaking of this teenager, because we're talking about a part of us that is a teenager, and for me, the teenager is a massive rebel. And I know that you also call yourself an activist rebel. And I'm curious to know in which ways you express yourself as a rebel in all this, let's say, goddess wholeness. There is a part that is a little rebel. So how does it show up for you?
Oh, well, firstly, I'll say Goddess Kali, just like that energy, defying my inner critic, defying all of those parts of myself that tell me I'm not good enough, defying all these ideas of what it means to be a good girl and, oh, I can't be sexy. It's kind of like that part of me that's like, you're telling me I can't be sexy? I'm going to be even more sexy. I'm going to really embody it. When I look at myself in the mirror and I have these thoughts about being ugly, I emphasize that ugliness kind of. Like it's really an interesting practice that I do where if I'm having a fixation on, oh, my nose looks big, or oh, I don't like my lips, or whatever it is that I'm considering a flaw, I breathe in and I just embody it more. And I'm like, okay, fine. You want to call me that? Like, I'm going to show you that I can be sexy even with these flaws or whatever it is that I'm saying isn't good enough. So defying all of that, defying all of these patriarchal ideas of the feminine and how she should be, and showing that the feminine and the true goddess essence doesn't have to be any particular way. She just is. And she's going to show up however she's meant to. So that's really how I embody my activist rebel.
I love that. I absolutely love that. It's like, okay, like I judge myself as ugly. All right, I'm gonna be ugly then. Whatever. I love it. I love it. Because that also can come with acceptance, right? Like when you fully embody these parts, it's like you're in acceptance, like, okay, then I have an ugly nose or I have an ugly whatever, right? And then once you can accept it, then there is nothing like in resistance anymore. And I feel like also to this topic of like resisting some parts of you, it's a good way to navigate it when you actually can find something that is good about it. So for example, I read in one of the books of my mentor Teal Swan, she was giving this example of cellulite, right? A lot of women have a problem with their cellulite, but she was saying, okay, find all the positive aspects of the cellulite so that you release resistance to it. So for example, okay, the cellulite is actually filtering all these people or all these men that only look at how I look, and I'm only going to connect with the ones that for them it actually doesn't matter as much, and I would not even want to connect with the ones that, you know, prioritize only looks over my inside and my personality anyway. So it's actually great that I have it, because then it can help me to distill, you know, who I should actually keep my relationship with or who I shouldn't. And this is only one example, but you can find ways to appreciate, in a way, to find the positive aspects of whatever you resist within yourself. And then you're going to realize that it's going to be way easier for you to accept it, because you're going to flip the coin and you're going to see the other polarity of this thing, because actually everything is good and bad, quote unquote, right? Because you can find benefits and drawbacks to literally anything. So for example, if you're super beautiful and slim, maybe people only look at your looks and they are not, you know, caring as much about your inside. And if you're, you know, feeling fat and ugly, then maybe there's a drawback to that, that you're maybe not healthy. But both of these perspectives can have benefits and drawbacks, right? So yeah, just wanted to mention that, because I think it's a great practice to just release resistance to ourselves.
Yes, because when you do that, it does like open up the gateway for more parts of yourself to truly come through. And everything is that polarity, and it all is that perspective. And so I think our real intention is to come into such deep connections with ourselves that we can hold space for all these different perspectives. And soon, surely enough, we will all end up coming into this wholeness that, you know, it's that yin yang polarity, but that full circle of all that is. When we hold space for all these different perspectives, we end up connecting with each other in some weird way, right? Like we need that contrast to evolve. But while it's this illusion of separation and individuality, and they have their ideas of what beauty is, I have my ideas of what beauty is, they see ugly this way, I see beauty this way, whatever it may be, we end up reflecting off of each other. And there's some connection that flows from that.
Absolutely. And so to this topic of a goddess, I would love to ask one last little question. I mean, maybe almost last, because the goddess is something feminine, something romantic, something sexy. So I'm curious to know, how do you nurture this romantic relationship with yourself? Like how to be romantic with yourself? What are your favorite ways to bring this energy in?
Sensuality for sure. Firstly, starting out, even if you don't feel comfortable with yourself in a sexy way, it doesn't have to be particularly sexy. It doesn't matter if you have your hair done or however you look. Just being with yourself raw in your natural state, even, it doesn't matter. I think of the bathtub as a really good place to get sensual. Having the body of water around you, flowing around you, and just feeling into it. If you're not used to feeling into your senses, just noticing what you hear, smell, taste in your mouth, feel in your body, just noticing in your awareness what's around you, just starting there. And then I really love to just start moving, massage the breasts, massage the body, rub the body, even just like this, tuning into the body, just really giving it love, thinking about your body from a external perspective. Think about how you look at someone else that you think is worthy of love and beautiful, and just connecting in with it. I'm rubbing myself right now. Just
I
rubbing the
love it.
body, connecting into the body. That's how we first start. Sensuality can broaden, but I feel like staying there with that beginning phase, connecting into yourself instead of projecting all these ideas of, oh, well, I'm not sexy, I'm not this, all these negative thoughts, thinking of yourself in a loving way and giving yourself that love.
Amazing. And I love what you said about looking at yourself from the external perspective, because when I asked this question, the first tip that came to my consciousness was to, because we are all one energy, so we can tune into the perspectives of other people about us. So what if we channeled the perspective of someone that is madly in love with us, like a partner, or like someone that is just, crazy about us, and we channel their perspective and then look at ourselves from that perspective? And also, what if we could do all these things with ourselves that we would do with our romantic partner? So what if we could take ourselves out on a date and have like a nice piece of cake and coffee? And what if we could, touch ourselves, as you said, like rub our body, or be super nurturing towards ourselves and touch our own face, or just care about ourselves in the way that we would care about this romantic partner? Because sometimes we forget that we can literally express this part of us, this romantic part of us, not only to the other person, but also towards ourselves. So however you would act towards your romantic partner, try it for yourself and see how this romantic relationship with yourself develops. And I love taking myself out on dates. Like the last 2 Valentine's Day, I took myself out on a date and it was amazing. So I absolutely love it. And I highly, highly recommend it. If you're ever single on Valentine's Day, just don't get sad. Just take yourself out on a date, give yourself some self-love, and go to the hot tub, with some nice smells, aromatherapy, rub your body, and you're gonna feel amazing.
Yes. And thinking about yourself from that perspective of a lover, it's it's a backwards way. It may seem like, oh, well, I'm not then really giving myself love because I'm thinking about giving love to someone else. But it is a bridge to help you connect in with yourself. And the more that you do it, the more that you will look at yourself and say, I am worthy of love. And you come more connected to yourself. That way, when you go into your next sensuality practice, you're like, I'm giving myself love today. You don't have to think about giving your lover love. It's, oh, I'm worthy of love.
Absolutely. And it's always about directing this energy towards yourself. Because oftentimes when I do my heart opening ceremonies, events, I guide people in meditation where they first hug the person that they love the most and they really radiate this love from their heart. But then I'm like, okay, now that you have all this energy radiating from your heart, direct it towards you and hug yourself. And for some people, many people, including myself, it's way easier first to radiate this love towards another person, because we learned that it's like selfish to love yourself, right? Oftentimes we have these programs. So the same with like romantic energy. First, we can just radiate it towards someone else, but actually we can only radiate it towards ourselves and direct it there. And if it's easier for you, you can start with someone else, but then the more you practice it, it's going to be easier for you to just emanate it by itself towards yourself. And that's going to be a great, great practice. Amazing. Thank you so much, Katie. I have one last little question. Where could people find you if they want to know more about you and see your content and maybe sign up for some of your programs or offerings? I'm curious to know.
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at Evolving with Ellis, and my website, evolvingwithellis.com, and TikTok as well, Evolving with Ellis. It's all Evolving with Ellis, and I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes. So
Amazing. Thanks a lot, my dear. I am really grateful that you showed up on the podcast and we talked about such important topics, because I feel like finding your inner beauty is just very, very crucial for us to express ourselves as the soul walking in the human body, as the divinity, divine feminine here on earth. So thanks a lot for talking about it, because yeah, it's very important.
Yes, thank you. We all deserve to embrace our beauty. So thank you for having me.